Welcome to the WorldWire Update. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon for more updates and thrilling short scenes. Have you ever wondered who actually decides how much you pay for everyday essentials, like a new car or even a washing machine? It might surprise you to learn that the answer isn't just about supply and demand, or what's happening at your local store. In fact, sometimes the price tag you see could be influenced, or even set, by a single decision maker sitting in the White House, far from the showroom floor. This idea that one person in the Oval Office could have so much control over your wallet has sparked a passionate and ongoing national debate, with people on both sides raising their voices. Recently, the Supreme Court handed down a landmark decision that's sending shockwaves through Washington, D.C. and rippling out to factory floors and businesses across the country. At the center of this case were sweeping tariffs, essentially taxes on imported goods, imposed by former President Trump, which affected everything from electronics to clothing and cars. But the real question before the court wasn't just about whether these tariffs were good or bad for the economy. Instead, it was about something even bigger: who, according to the Constitution, actually has the authority to create and enforce these tariffs: the president, acting alone, or Congress, representing the people? To answer this, the justices had to dig deep into the nation's founding documents and centuries of American law, weighing the balance of power between the executive and legislative branches. Their ruling goes far beyond economics. It touches the very core of our democracy, setting new boundaries for presidential authority and reinforcing the checks and balances that define our government. The impact of this decision will be felt for years to come, shaping not only future presidencies and the role of Congress, but also the prices Americans see at the store, the gas pump, and in their everyday lives. So, how did we reach this pivotal moment? Why does it matter so much? And what could it mean for your wallet and your family's financial future? Let's break it all down together. The story begins with President Trump's bold campaign promise to completely overhaul America's trade relationships and put America first. He argued that decades of trade deals had left American workers behind, and he vowed to take dramatic action to protect U.S. industries. In 2018, his administration imposed sweeping tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars in imports, with a special focus on goods from China. These tariffs targeted a wide range of products: steel, aluminum, electronics, and many others, aiming to pressure foreign governments and companies to change their trade practices. The main goal was clear: protect American industries and jobs from what the White House described as unfair foreign competition. Trump's team argued that these tough measures would revive U.S. manufacturing and restore lost jobs, especially in industries hit hardest by globalization. The legal foundation for these actions was the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. This law gives the president special authority to act during a national emergency, allowing sweeping changes to trade policy without waiting for Congress. The impact was immediate and far-reaching. Some U.S. producers, especially in steel and aluminum, saw a boost. But for many businesses and consumers, the tariffs meant higher costs for materials and finished goods. Companies that relied on imported parts or products faced tough choices: raise prices, cut profits, or even lay off workers. For American families, everyday items, from electronics to groceries, became more expensive almost overnight. Farmers in particular were hit hard by retaliatory tariffs from other countries. Many saw their exports plummet, and some struggled to stay afloat as foreign markets closed their doors to American crops. As economic pain spread, business groups and trade associations began to push back. They argued that the president had overstepped his legal authority and that the tariffs were doing more harm than good to the broader economy. Their solution was to take the fight to court, launching a high-stakes constitutional battle over who truly controls America's trade policy: the president or Congress. The legal fight over tariffs boiled down to a core question: who controls the power of the purse? Challengers argued that only Congress, as the people's branch, can impose tariffs, essentially taxes, under Article 1 of the Constitution. They said the president can't create massive tax schemes alone, and Congress can't hand over its core powers without clear limits, a principle called the non-delegation doctrine. Trump's team countered that the president has broad authority in foreign policy and national security, and that IEEPA gave him the flexibility to act fast in emergencies. They argued presidents have long managed trade disputes to protect U.S. interests, The courts now had to decide, was this a legitimate use of delegated power, or an unconstitutional overreach? The answer would define the boundary between Congress's power over taxes and the president's power over foreign affairs. Before reaching the Supreme Court, the tariff case faced tough scrutiny in lower courts. The U.S. Court of International Trade ruled the president had overstepped by using IEEPA to impose broad, long-term tariffs. The government appealed, but the Federal Circuit upheld the decision, calling it an unconstitutional stretch of executive power. The court said Congress hadn't provided clear guidance, essentially giving the president a blank check, something the Constitution forbids. These rulings sent a strong message. The judiciary was serious about maintaining the separation of powers. With two major losses, the administration rushed the case to the Supreme Court, arguing that the lower courts threatened the president's ability to conduct foreign policy. The Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, recognizing its national importance. The stage was set for a final, decisive ruling. The Supreme Court's decision today was not made in a vacuum. It was shaped by decades of legal precedent and a long history of debate over presidential power. Each era brought new challenges, and the court's approach has evolved as the nation has faced wars, economic crises, and shifting global dynamics. In 1936, the Curtis Wright case became a landmark, affirming that Congress could delegate certain foreign affairs powers to the president, but only if it provided clear standards to guide that authority. This case set the tone for how much leeway presidents would have in international matters. Decades later, President Nixon invoked emergency powers to impose import surcharges in 1971, sparking controversy. Congress responded by tightening the law, determined to prevent unchecked presidential action and to reassert its own constitutional role. Modern trade laws, such as the Trade Acts of 1934 and 1974, reflected this ongoing tug-of-war. They granted presidents some authority to act on trade, but always within strict limits and oversight set by Congress, ensuring a balance of power. In this case, the challengers argued that Trump's tariffs broke with this tradition, using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, in a way Congress never intended, and potentially upsetting decades of careful balance. The justices faced a difficult question. How much deference should be given to presidents in foreign policy, especially when Congress has historically controlled taxes and trade? The answer would have far-reaching consequences. Was IEEPA a legitimate limited delegation of power, or did it open the door to an unchecked expansion of presidential authority over trade and economic policy? Ultimately, the court's answer would hinge on how it interpreted this complex legal and historical backdrop, weighing the intent of Congress against the realities of modern governance. The stakes were high. At issue was whether a president could unilaterally reshape the nation's trade policy, or whether the Constitution's checks and balances would prevail in this new era of global uncertainty. The Supreme Court ruled 7-2 against the former president's tariffs. The majority said the IEEPA tariffs were an unconstitutional grab of legislative power by the executive branch. The court reaffirmed only Congress can lay taxes and regulate foreign commerce, and any delegation must have clear limits. The justices found IEEPA lacked those limits when used for sweeping long-term tariffs. Allowing such power would turn the president into a lawmaker, blurring the lines between branches. The dissent argued the court was tying the president's hands in foreign policy, but the majority held firm. The decision echoed lower court rulings and marked a major check on presidential power. The gavel fell, striking down a key pillar of the previous administration's trade policy. The Supreme Court's decision has immediate sweeping effects. Businesses and consumers could see lower prices as tariffs disappear, but some U.S. industries may face new competition. For the presidency, it's a sharp limit. Future presidents can't use emergency powers to impose broad tariffs without clear congressional approval. The ruling pushes trade debates back to Congress, demanding lawmakers craft specific, balanced policies. Congress now must take responsibility for trade laws. No more passing the buck to the executive. The decision reinforces checks and balances, ensuring massive economic decisions require public debate and legislative approval. It's a powerful reminder. In America, the Constitution, not any one person, remains the ultimate authority. The power to tax and spend stays with the people's representatives, safeguarding democracy for all.